Thank you everyone for joining here this afternoon, this evening, and welcome to our first inaugural Pandemic Pivots webinar. We're delighted to be hosting Travis Paul, a family member at Paul Family Farms. In this series of webinars, we're going to be interviewing small business owners who have been impacted by COVID, but are making the proverbial lemonade. They are finding ways to adjust their business and find ways to adapt and continue to grow through these crazy times that we're living through. You are all in for a real treat tonight. Travis Paul is part of a fifth generation family farm. He is one of the most thoughtful small business owners that I have the pleasure of knowing, and he's been doing some really cool things through the COVID-19 crisis and finding really creative ways to make sure that his business is adjusting to the times that we're living in. So before we jump into the interview, I wanted to quickly introduce myself and the Honeycomb Credit organization. So my name is George Cook. I am the co-founder and CEO of Honeycomb Credit. And Honeycomb Credit is a loan crowdfunding platform where locally owned small businesses can borrow from their own customers and fans and community members. It looks and feels somewhat like a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo, but instead of donating $100 and getting a t-shirt in return, you can invest $100 or $1,000, support a locally owned small business, whether they are adjusting their business model in the face of COVID or planning an expansion project, and earn a competitive return while doing good in your own community. So really excited to be joined today by Travis. Travis, I know that the business has been around for 150 years. Welcome to Pandemic Pivots. Why don't we start by telling us a little bit about yourself and this 5-generation family business?
Yeah, thanks, George. So, it's one, thank you guys for inviting me. This is super exciting. I admire what Honeycomb's doing. I have a lot of friends that have been part of it. So exciting that I can, be here and talk. So, when you look at the farm, we've actually been on the property since 1865. So this is our family's 155th year on the farm. So my great-great-grandfather to my great-grandfather to my grandfather, and now my dad and his brothers and sisters and their spouses live on the farm, and where the original plot was, and we've transitioned a lot over the years. And it's one of those things is the world changes, we continue to change, and we're now we're producing maple syrup and honey. Traditionally we were a dairy farm, so I say of our 155 years, 130 of them were we're making milk and being a dairy farm, and also having some horses and chickens and pigs and all the other things. And as we transitioned out of that, as dairy farming became so difficult, we then moved into now where we're tapping maple trees and we're making maple syrup and producing honey, and that's really our main focus for our business. So kept the property together, which is exciting. So we have about 250 acres on our farm. We've been able to keep that property now for over 150 years.
That's awesome. So talk a little bit about your involvement with the farm. How long have you been involved? Probably since you could walk, but how long have you been involved? And talk a little bit about, I know you've been doing some really interesting things over the past few years to help adjust the business model a little bit and what is increasingly becoming kind of a commodity market for maple syrup. How do you stand out in that type of environment?
Yeah, and so, I obviously grew up on the farm. When I was 18, moved away, went to college, would come home in the summers and was involved. But really from the time I was, about 18 till I was 30, was away from the farm. So would come home a little bit, was involved, but not very much. As I moved to Pittsburgh for the first time with my day job, I want to get more involved with the farm. So, had spent quite a bit of time in corporate America, and I moved 7 times in 9 years and a number of different projects, and really wanted to do more with the farm. So when I moved to Pittsburgh, at this point, our maple syrup business had been growing and was moving from sort of this hobby phase to like, hey, we think there's a big opportunity there. So, really my dad and his brother, Tim, so Bud and Tim were the ones that said, I really think this will be our next phase of the farm as we start to plan this out. And I said, well, if we're going to do this, let's really put a plan together and go forward. So I'm moving. So we look at a timeline around 2015. I'm moving to Pittsburgh for the first time. The back half of 2015, I'm back and forth as I'm moving here. But we're saying, hey, for the 2016 season. So for those of you that maybe aren't super familiar with maple syrup, we make maple syrup about 30 days a year. So it's really for us the month of March. So we want days above freezing, nights below freezing, lots of sunshine, and before the maple blooms. So once the maple trees blossom for the year, we're done. So we're putting in a ton of work planning. We went from really, a couple hundred taps, maybe 1,000 taps, up to over 5,000 taps that year, put in new equipment, built a new sugar shack, and said, hey, we think there's a really big opportunity. So come to the 2016 season, we make maple syrup, and for most maple syrup producers, it gets sold on a commodity market, which is similar to a lot of farming and has been for a long time. And, like kind of when we had the dairy cows, the milk went onto a milk truck and it went to the milk plant. We never saw it again. So our first year, we make this big expansion and we take maple syrup and we take it to what the commodity buyer is or the maple syrup auction. And, we get this certified check, and that day we walk away, but the prices are so tough, because you have no control over your product. So you make all this product, they go through, they grade it, they test it, they say this is what it's worth, and then that's it. And they write you a check, and you really have no say over it. I think also what's interesting with maple syrup is 95% of the world's maple syrup is made in Canada. So you think about this, Quebec, Ontario is making the majority of the maple syrup. Vermont makes up about half of what's left, and then everybody else makes a little bit from there. So the price of maple syrup at a commodity market is really driven by, one, their volume, which each year has been setting record volumes, but two, currency fluctuations. So if you look at the Canadian dollar versus the strength of the US dollar over the last 10 years, it's dropped significantly. So, at one point the Canadian dollar was actually stronger than the US dollar. Now it's trading, 70, 75 cents on the dollar, which in turn, if I'm someone that's buying, tons and tons of maple syrup, well, I can go to Canada and get it much cheaper than I can get it in the US. So after our 2016 year, we said, we really think, we should try to go with our own brand. And said, we have this great story, we have this great product, we make really good maple syrup, why should we sell it all to Canada or Vermont or New Hampshire? So we did keep a little bit of syrup back in 2016, and that's when we decided to say, we're going to go after the farmers market business, we're going to go after restaurants, we're going to really start to focus there. And that's where we really started to launch the brand of Paul Family Farms. So that kind of brought us up to why we decided to get out of the commodity market. And it was really just a price-driven piece. There was no way we were going to make money selling it at the auction.
You said you were at 5,000 trees in 2016. What approximately how big is the operation now?
Yeah, so we're getting, now we're between 6,000 and 7,000 taps. So each tree, we don't tap any tree smaller than 9 inches in diameter. Our largest trees will tap 3 times. So we're getting up. We continue to add more and more taps. Hopefully this year we're closer to about 8,000 trees going into this season.
Wow,
so,
that's really exciting.
To put into perspective, the largest maple producer in the U.S. has 465,000 trees tapped. So we still have room to grow.
Yes. Wow, that's very cool. Thank you for sharing that. So, March rolls around. I guess even late February. When did it become clear to you that this business model was going to get shaken up, that the world was changing? What were kind of the warning signs, and what were some of the first things that you did?
Yeah. So I think we probably step back of 2016, we say, this doesn't really make sense for us to sell at the auction. So we said, we're really going to try to go after putting our name around it, our brand, and, lots of learnings through there. As we get through this, we say, okay, well, we don't really know a lot about the food industry or the restaurant industry or how people buy this. So we started some farmers markets. We were really fortunate. Our first ever restaurant customer when we did this was Jacqueline and Nate Shadle, who own the Speckled Egg, who's, part of Honeycomb. They had a restaurant at that time called Josephine's Toast, and they brought us in. And that was really where we started was, you see what they were buying. And I'm like, well, we should really go after this restaurant business. So we were doing farmers markets. We had an online store. We had a couple retailers, but really we were on this focus on how do we keep growing restaurant business? because it was easy, it was consistent, it was a ton of business, and it was fun. We were partnering with other small businesses and working together. So as we look into the back half of 2019, the first couple months of 2020, it was off the charts in terms of how much we were selling to restaurants. So, I mean, it was, hundreds of gallons of syrup every single month was going to restaurants. And then that stopped, and that's been really slow since then. And so what I'd say, it was really, end of February, I started saying, like, something's happening. You're hearing all this buzz. In the US, we weren't really talking about it yet, but if you're, kind of following world news, like, something strange is happening, and, they're shutting things down. And I'd say the first week of March is when I started to get really nervous and say, like, okay, something's big is going to happen. So I was actually going back through my notes with this. Right around March 15th was when I said, we're going to have to figure out how to change our business. We need to plan for massive shutdowns. People won't be going to restaurants anymore. And I took the assumption of a restaurant will never buy syrup again. And so I said, if I can figure out how to make money with this business and change our model with the assumption that I'll never sell to a restaurant again, if the restaurants, when they reopen and they start buying again, that'll just be extra business, because we already knew how to sell to those. So really the first thing we did was I said, okay, got to change our business. How do we get in touch with all of our customers? So how do we get in touch with everybody that's bought from us at a farmer's market, has been to our website, follows us online, and our restaurant partners. And so the first thing we did was, I had a newsletter, but we really didn't use it. It was sort of one of these fun hobbies. I said, well, one day I'll write a newsletter, and I'm not a good writer. That's not a thing that I'm very good at. So I'm good at putting bullet points on a page, but that's about it. But I said, we need to leverage this tool and get out and talk to our customers. So March 17th was the day we sent our newsletter out. And it was really just saying, hey, we don't know what's going to happen here, but we're going to do our part. And so a couple things we did right away was on social media, we were giving away gift cards to all of our restaurant partners, because, you think for a lot of these restaurants, I mean, it was just this, things were going great, and then immediately there's no cash, and the restaurant business is a very lean business to begin with. And, I said, we have all these great friends. I mean, my best friends in Pittsburgh are now all restaurateurs and all these great partners. And I said, we need to do something. So right away, we started giving out gift cards. So we were buying $10, $20 gift cards, not a ton, but to all the different restaurants that we partner with. And to put in perspective, that's about 80 different businesses that we went out and we bought business cards or gift cards from. And we just started giving them away on social media. So doing contests and trying to get out there, helping them with a little bit of cash and keeping excitement going. So, at the same time, when we did that, I said, we need to be part of our community right now. Thankfully for us, you look at the maple syrup business, we already planned for March and April to be tough. Essentially we're making all of our inventory in 1 month. And so I always say April 1st, we have 365 days of inventory. And then it's our job to try to figure out how to sell this over the next year and move on with it. So we kind of plan for this cash crunch. Okay, we're going to spend a ton of money to make all this syrup. April is going to be a little slow, and then March or May and June and so on starts to move up. So we had already planned for that, but I said, we need to help our community right now. And I'm not a big fan of sales. I'm not a big fan of promotions or discounts, especially as a small business, because all that does is hurt cash flow. And especially at times like these, I feel like the gut reaction is to say, give 5% off or free shipping. What we did in turn was, rather than do that, we started picking a different community organization each month to donate, a percentage of our online sales to. So we've done feedingamerica.org, which was our first one, because they seem to be the best response in getting money to food banks. We did one in helping relaunch farmers markets. We're doing one for our hometown of, in Gelton, where we had to cancel our 4th of July celebration, which brings a ton of money to our small town. And so we're donating to the 2021. August will be actually Community Kitchen here in Pittsburgh. So we're actually going to keep this going. Every month, we're going to donate 5% of our online sales to a different community-based organization.
So I think it's really interesting you talked about how you basically assumed that restaurant sales were going away. But at the same time, one of the first things you did was really proactively launch this campaign to bolster the allies that you have within the restaurant community. Kind of talk through that community that you've built. I think many people think of Paul Family Farms as a catalyst that has really kind of brought the Pittsburgh restaurant scene together in many ways. Talk about the importance of that community, both before COVID, but also going through the COVID crisis.
Yeah. So I'd say one of the things I've learned, over the years with both my day job and then with Paul Family Farms is you want everyone in your pipeline to be really strong. And so you start to look at this and, I want my supplier to be really strong, so we have a company that most of our material for maple syrup comes from a company out of Vermont. And that's where we get our packaging from, all of our equipment. So I want them to be really strong and healthy. So times like this where I can go back to them and when all this happened, I said, we're going to do our best to pay our bill on time, but let's be realistic. Like, we just lost a ton of our business. Can you give us some dating on some of these invoices? So my first thing was, okay, I want this, but then the second side of that is I want the whole pipeline really strong. So as we started learning about this business, I realized quickly, we have a job to make maple syrup and a safe quality product that, meets our customers' demands. But really our job is to help our restaurant partners bring customers in and buy dishes with maple syrup. So I always say, if someone comes in, they order your pancakes or they order a maple old fashioned or they order ice cream or something with maple syrup, it just helps all of us. And I also want them to be healthy as well, because it's really just this network. And I say it's kind of like a pipeline in one sense, or a magnet in another sense, where the stronger that is, the more it works together, the healthier everyone is. And so I said, for my business planning, I'm going to build a model that we can sell syrup without restaurants. But at the end of the day, I knew I needed that business. And that's really what's helped us grow, is sort of this word of mouth and this relationships. And we did, we had our first maple syrup year. The next year we said, we're going to do this. And what we did is we actually took about 15 chefs to the farm. So each year we take a group of chefs to the farm to learn to make maple syrup. And it's a lot of fun. It's really neat, but it also, you start to learn, and I start to understand our customers. And I think that's got to be a key thing for any small business, is really understanding what motivates your customers, what scares your customers, what gives them anxiety, and how do you partner together. So I never wanted to be just a vendor of maple syrup. I wanted to be a partner with these restaurants, and I wanted to, because selfishly, the bigger the restaurant is, the more they sell, the more maple syrup they buy, and that's good for me. But it's really just this healthy thing that it really helps smooth things out when you go through bumps like this. So I thought, when we said, okay, I'm going to build a model that says I don't need restaurants, but at the end of the day, we need them. We need them to be healthy. I need them buying syrup. The quickest thing I can do right now is buying gift cards, because it gets them some cash in the door right away.
Yeah, and so for everyone kind of following along at home here, I have got a few more questions for Travis, but I want to make sure everyone's aware. If you have questions, please do submit them through the Q&A chat functionality, and we'll be answering audience questions here in just a couple of minutes. So Travis, I really, kind of going back to around March 15th, you said now things were becoming pretty clear that the world was changing. It was very unclear what the farmers markets were going to look like. The restaurant sales were dropping very quickly. You talked about engaging with your online audience and really kind of solidifying some of those relationships. So any tips or tricks, any ideas to share about how to really bring that online audience together and engage with folks, and also just how to switch rapidly to online fulfillment. I know we talked offline about some of the things you did to make your life easier in terms of fulfilling shipping orders in your garage, but would love
Yep.
to hear some of those best practices.
Yep. So I think one of the key things, I try to really live my life by this, and there's a great Mark Twain quote that says, the first thing you should do every morning is eat a live frog, because your day will get better after that. And I think that if you take that approach of, I'm going to do the most difficult thing that I need to do, and that was kind of what I said, back in March, was this is not going to be easy, but I can't just sit around and wait for things to be different. I can't wait for this to change. I need to say it's going to be really tough, and how do we figure that out? So I felt like, and I mean, admittedly, I thought that we wouldn't take so long. I thought that, within a couple months we'd be okay. Restrictions would lift. We'd have this under control. And I would say if you asked me back in middle of March, I would have said by middle of May what things are normalizing. And, for whatever reason, it's not, I don't know why, but so we said, but what I did was I said, let's start taking this into bites, and one of my other favorite, sayings is, the way you eat an elephant is one bite at a time, so, how do you start? So I said, first thing, how do we engage with customers? So I had this bank of, people, and I said, let's send them an email. So we sent them an email and I said, we're going to send you updates every 2 weeks about one, what we're doing, but two, what we're doing on the farm, and I really want to take this approach of everybody has stress right now. Everybody has anxiety right now, but we still have a lot of things to be grateful for and really happy. And what was nice for us is maple trees didn't really know there was a pandemic. So, we had a fantastic year making maple syrup. We made a lot of maple syrup. We made really good maple syrup. Probably some of the best tasting syrup we've made. And that's just season to season, batch to batch. And, but at the same time, I always say the first week of March, we actually had bought a new bottling system. So that was going to be delivered that week. And we also had custom jugs made. So we actually had a ton of expense going out. And I said, we got to stay the course, it was almost this idea of there was a little bit of fun in the idea of going for broke. What's it matter if all this collapses? Let's keep doing it. So, when we were telling that story, we tried to keep our messaging really positive and grateful and excitement. Hey, things are really crazy right now and no one knows what's going to happen, but let's make the best of it. So then we said, okay, I got to figure out how to sell online. So we had an online store, not really, it was more for fun than anything. We would do a couple orders a month on it. And so the first thing I said is, okay, I need to just spend some time and figure this out. So we did through GoDaddy. I'd recommend anyone who's maybe not an expert online or has the money. GoDaddy has a really simple solution to build a store. And I said, let's keep it really simple. Our key items that people buy, not the whole product catalog you can get at a market, but similar there. So first we built that out. The next thing I looked at was shipping costs. So one, we're all used to Amazon, and so I can go to Amazon and I can buy anything and it feels like it's here in a couple hours and it's free to ship. And I said, I'm not Amazon and I don't want to be Amazon, but I also need to understand if I'm someone that's buying maple syrup, well, I could go to Amazon and get it with free shipping. So we did the math and we found that we could charge $5 shipping. So our average shipping cost is about $8.70 to ship. So if I charge someone $5, there's about, $4 of cost that I'm eating. But I'm looking at it this way. One, I'm reaching people I can't reach right now, because I don't have an outlet. We weren't in grocery stores or not in grocery stores, or they were closed. And, so that was the first thing is, okay, I need to reach these people. I'm okay if I give up a little bit of money here. And once we did that, I would say immediately we saw a lift in sales. Because I was looking at a report, and you get this from GoDaddy, of people that go and put something in their cart, but they don't check out. And we're having more people do that than people checking out. So once we switched to $5 shipping, it went through the roof. So, and so I think that was the first thing was, okay, let's lower our shipping costs. And then, so to put in perspective, outside of maybe the holiday season, we would ship maybe 4 or 5 boxes a month, 10 at the most. In the month of April, we shipped 220 boxes. So immediately we started engaging with customers. We did paid social media. We did all this, but I said, we got to figure out how to ship now. So it went from shipping, 40, 60, 80 gallons at a time to now shipping a quart here, a pint here, and things like that. So at that point we said, okay, how do we do this? And the first thing I did is I went to Uline. So anyone that's looking for packaging or shipping their materials, go to Uline. They'll send you free samples of literally anything in their catalog. So I called Uline and said, hey, here's all my different ideas. I need you to send me all these different samples. So from there, we just started packing different boxes, different sizes. And from there, I'd say probably it's a super tactical thing. If you're someone that packs boxes and ships, get their newspaper stock. So it's plain paper, but it's the same stock that a newspaper would be printed on. It's the best thing to pack with. Once we moved to that, we haven't had a single broken or leaked bottle. So that was a huge step. So I said, okay, first I need to engage my customers, tell them what's going on. And I also wanted this engagement of everybody's doom and gloom. Let's talk about the fun stuff that's going on the farm. Let's talk about our new bottles, our new packaging, our new filling line, all the syrup we're making. from there, I said, I need to figure out how to make this website better. And it was a lot of hours and just like grinding it out, testing things. Once orders started coming in, I said, well, I need to get better at shipping. So I said, how do I figure out packaging? So when we did that, then the last piece was, I was like, I need to figure out how to lower my shipping cost. And what's amazing, there's a number of different websites where you can shop what freight costs are or shipping costs. I use a website called Shippo. So it's like hippo with an H. So it's goshippo.com. What's nice is it integrates with your website, and then you plug it in and it automatically calculates based on weight and size of my products. And then it says, okay, if I want to ship through UPS, it's this price. If it's FedEx, it's this price. If DHL, so on, so on. So we moved everything over to Shippo, and that was a huge savings. I think a lot of people default if they're shipping to the flat rate, if it fits, it ships kind of box. It's great if you're shipping to California, but if you're shipping, more locally or closer, and it isn't super heavy, and maple syrup's pretty heavy, it's 12 pounds, 12 pounds the gallon. Even for us, it's significantly cheaper to ship through Shippo than it is to go through the flat rate boxes. So it's still, we ship everything postal service. So everything goes there. I schedule a pickup, they come and get it. But going through them was a big step. So it was really kind of that, back to the analogy of how you eat an elephant. It was like, okay, I need to take little bites. If I try to figure out how I'm going to just switch my business from selling all this gallons of syrup to restaurants to now being essentially, an online partner, it's going to be impossible. So it's just kind of step by step. And when something didn't work, we changed it and moved from there.
So I loved the really tactical examples of Uline and Shippo as tools to help with the shipping and distribution. Any thoughts around kind of the email and social media marketing you talked about at the beginning? Any particular tools that you found helpful there as you were pivoting your business?
Yeah. So we were using Mailchimp to send out our newsletters, and quite frankly, I prefer Mailchimp. But I would say the problem with Mailchimp, if you're not someone who's using it today, is there's so many options. And kind of going back to like me not being a good writer, this was very overwhelming to like try to write this giant newsletter, and I just was like, this isn't going to work for me. So then our first newsletters went out on Mailchimp, and I said, you know what? Let's look at other options. And so we use Square as our point of sale system, and I really like Square. I think it works well for people that don't have to customize orders, like in a restaurant where you have to change a ticket. It seems complex, but with us, it works well. But Square has a marketing feature. It's $15 a month to send newsletters. So we switched everything over to Square. So you don't get quite the breadth and the depth of it, but it was really nice. And then what's really nice is, it's integrating all those people that are buying from you. So one of the first things we did is when you buy from us, if you pay with a credit card and you have an email on file through Square, you get an email from us just saying, nice to meet you. And it thanks you for buying product, gives you a link to our website, where you can find who sells our product, recipes, all these different things. And, so we started there. And I think then the thing that I found was people don't want long, exhaustive newsletters, which, looking back on it, I should have known that, because if I get a newsletter with one line in or one topic, I read it and I usually engage with it. When I get a super long newsletter, I usually start scrolling through and I say, I'll get back to this, and then I never get back to it. So I think that was big. The next thing I found was planning out your social media. So, and I have a little journal at my desk and I continue to make notes in there, but Sunday nights, I try to plan my posts for the next 7 days. So Mondays might be a recipe, and Tuesday might be a promotion on what markets we're doing that week. And, Wednesday might be about someone we're partnering with. And Thursday, we try to always do Throwback Thursdays, which people love. And so each week I'm trying to plan all those out in advance. So I know that, and that makes it a lot easier for you to post. And I'd say posting on social media needs to be consistent, so like, it's not something you can just post when you're busy or when you're in season or when you're trying to get in touch with people. You need to do it regularly. And then you can do some fun things. So when I was starting to get like, kind of brain freeze here on what to do, we actually did the ABCs of the farm. So we did, A was for apiary, which is a term, for beehives, and, B was for grade B syrup. So every day that gave me then another 26 days of posts to make that made it super easy.
What was X?
Yeah. What's that?
What was X?
X was extraction, so for extracting honey. So I just capitalized the X in it. So, but if I thought about doing xylem, which is the technical term for maple sap, but I thought that was a little much of a stretch. But so I'd say that, and then another really tactical piece. Anytime you can include a picture of yourself or your customers or your family in those, the response was fantastic. So um, we did, and I would say one of the first posts we did, it was, we were filling all these gallons of maple syrup to go to restaurants. And so I had hundreds of gallons of maple syrup sitting in my garage. And I'm like, how many people are going to buy a gallon of maple syrup? So we took a picture of me standing in the kitchen holding 4 gallons of maple syrup and said, would anybody, want to buy a gallon of maple syrup? And it still is our most liked and shared and response post. So it's just a picture of me with a cheesy smile holding all these gallons of syrup. So I think on a tactical piece, if you do newsletters, do it consistently, but not every day. And then I think on the next one, is make sure you're giving this human touch. That's what makes us different to small businesses. Like we can provide a better level of service. We can provide a relationship. We can be part of our communities. That's what you should really focus on with it.
And so this is all great feedback and advice for businesses as they think about kind of getting back into back into business in this COVID world. The last dimension I wanted to talk a little bit about was I think you were one of the first businesses that I heard of to go back into farmers markets and find safe ways to do that. So maybe talk a little bit about your experience of going to a farmers market in 2020 and what that looks like and how you had to adjust Paul Family Farms and the brand and the interaction with customers to be able to still have that personal interaction, but to do so in a safe way.
Yeah. So I can tell you that, I got to give a huge praise and credit to the Bloomfield Development Committee, and Christina and Abby. So if you guys know them, they were, I think at times all the vendors were like, when's this market going to open? What's going to happen? But, it was kind of easy for us to say that. They weren't going through it. And I remember they were having, bi-weekly calls. So twice a week, we were having a call on what they were doing and what they were trying to get the market to and why there were delays. And but I can tell you the first day that we had a market, so this is now back early May, was the first farmers market they had. I got there early. They were there like with tape measures, measuring things out and drawing chalk lines. I mean, the amount of work they put in was phenomenal. So I think one, we were super fortunate, and I'm very grateful that we were part of a market that took it so serious. But for me, as we started thinking with the market, okay, I said, one, we need to have an option where people can order in advance. We then worked on our website to say, hey, you can order in advance. It'll be ready at the pickup with the market. It'll be a contactless, interaction. I then started anywhere I could see hand sanitizer, I was buying it. So I have a lot of, I'm not someone that's going to hoard it and price gouge people, but I have a lot of hand sanitizer right now. And but the big thing is one, there was probably some tactical steps. So what we did is, if you came to one of our markets before, we would have a market with a really nice tablecloth, and we had signs up, and we had tons of product on the table, and we were giving away tons of samples of product. That was a big thing for us, especially our bourbon barrel aged syrup, where most people may have not tried it before. So what we did is we stripped things down. So we made it where we could easily disinfect between customers. We could wipe down. We bought 2 tables. So we actually then, this is getting to the tactical piece, but we had 2 tables that separated it. So we didn't really touch. We bought a point of sale system that had a cord where it was a square reader, but essentially they would insert it themselves. We created this really simple bucket system where, and this was a lot of honor, but we had 2 1-gallon buckets on our table. And if you were paying in cash, we had you put your money in one bucket, and then you would make your own change out of the other bucket. So we tried to make it as contactless as possible for people. And it was really tough. I tell you, the first farmers market we did was fantastic. There was this built up demand. There was tons of people. We sold a ton of product, but it was really scary. I remember that morning, like being so anxious, thinking like, what is this going to be like? And at this point, there's still a lot of fear of, what is this like to be in public, and how do you work with them? And so, from there, we've just learned each week. And so I can tell you I bought 6 cases of paper towels because I had no idea how many paper towels I'd need to do a market. You do not need 6 cases. You need like a roll for the season. So we bought disinfectants, and we just kind of said, let's go a little overboard and then start to pare our way back. And, we've kept that as, things have changed and we've moved into different phases. We still really limit our product. We try to disinfect in between customers. The one nice thing with us is it's all sealed. So, it's not like we're handling produce you're going to eat right away. And then again, just working with the different people at the farmers markets. And so we did a couple things where, one, like we had a couple farms who were doing CSAs, and we worked with them and gave them some really good wholesale pricing to get our syrup into their CSAs. We have people like our really good friends at Wise County Biscuits, you look at their model where they sold a lot at the market, and they had to switch from being able to make hot food to really packaged. And, so they were doing honey butter, and it's something that makes me laugh because we had one customer come back and said, I would have never imagined mixing honey and butter together. And we thought like that was a pretty common, mixture. So, but we really said, we're all in this together and we're just trying to figure this out, and there's almost a sense of peace where it's like, well, everybody's in the same boat. It's not like just our businesses having these headaches, everyone is. So, but I'd say, if you're looking at the 2-table system is really good. It keeps the distance. If you're someone that's, handling a lot of cash, doing the buckets really seem to work. It's a little bit of a pain, but I think right now there's just a level of trust that has to happen. Like we have to be trusting each other right now.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I was about to ask about kind of what the future holds, and I think Drew just submitted a question here that probably sums it up better than I could. But he asks, so as everything is going back to normal,
Yeah.
one of these days eventually, do you anticipate that you're going to continue to go back to focusing on restaurants? Will you continue to focus on the online store? How, as a small business with very limited resources and limited time, how do you anticipate going back to normal, and will you kind of focus back on the original market or continue to do more in the online world?
Yeah. So I'd say one, I think what's important when we look at this kind of what's happening, the one thing that COVID has done is it's accelerated trends, and I think we don't always step back and look at it that way because everything just seemed to like our world got flipped upside down. But really, I think you can look to a lot of things and say, well, this sped up a trend of people buying online. I think it also sped up a trend more micro for us of like people wanting high quality food delivered to their house. So when you look at things like like Sunbasket and Blue Apron and some of these other things, like there's that demand there. And then even more of a level, you look at someone like Butter, like Butter Joint, formerly Legume, like they're doing a home delivery system. We've done a lot of work with another one who's similar to boat as us, Medium Rare Foods, who did a lot of very gourmet foods to restaurants. And I remember it was like that second week of March, he called me and we were talking about like, how do we do a home delivery system? And so I think it was speeding up that trend for us. I think that it also speeds up the trend of people wanting to know where their food comes from. It feels a little bit safer if it's coming directly from someone rather than maybe passing through a lot of different hands right now. But I'd say the biggest lesson I think that I've learned, and everyone should take away, is we need to have multiple segments as a small business. If you're someone that's really dependent on one revenue stream or one segment of customer, I mean, it might be a pandemic, it might be another type of market correction, but I think that we need to have multiple segments. So, my goal is, and probably another point is we actually hired 2 people. So first time we had non-family members really working with the maple syrup business. We hired 2 people to help with farmers markets because it just wasn't possible for me to work 4 markets a week. And so I said, well, it's going to cost us a little bit of money to, where I can't just put all that towards the business. So we hired a couple people, but my goal is we'll continue to do markets. We're going to continue to focus our online business because I think, you might be able to touch customers in a different way in Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh, but it was exciting. We're shipping syrup to California and to Alaska and to Hawaii and Puerto Rico. And it's like, without the online business, we'd never have that opportunity. So I might not make as much money as selling it at a farmer's market, but I'm still profitable and it's cash flow that I wouldn't get elsewhere. So, I think as we look towards the future, I think we'll try to get back into all the segments, so as restaurants start to reopen, and we're seeing it, but it's a different capacity. So restaurants that might have bought 4 gallons are now buying 4 quarts, or they're buying 1 gallon. Or, I delivered to one of our customers recently who typically would take like 25, 30 gallons to an order, and they took 4 gallons. So it's going to be a little bit of shifting there, but I want to continue the farmers markets. I want to continue the online business, restaurants. Hopefully we can move into grocery. But I think the next thing that I look at is, how do we start creating a safe, comfortable experience, that in a world today where nothing really seems like normal or comfortable. And, I'd say maybe hopefully a preview of coming attractions. We're talking a lot about starting to do some sort of farm dinner or events on the farm. We have 250 acres, and of that, we have about 80 acres of fields we're not using. So we said, is there a way to work with those restaurants again and do, some sort of dinner on the farm that we have the space, we have the area. But I'd say my brain is turning now of how do we continue to make this experience? And I think that's another trend that accelerated. I think when you look at, a partner of ours, so Wiggle Whiskey, who, we get all of our barrels from to age syrup. When you go to any one of their spaces, it's not just a whiskey tasting or a spirits tasting. It's a full event, and they do this experience, and you feel very connected. I think that's where we all need to get to as small businesses, is how do we make a very safe, comfortable experience for people, where we're not just sitting in our house right now.
Yeah, that's awesome feedback, and I love the vision going forward as we start to hopefully round the corner and think about what the future looks like over the next 6-12 months. So I know we're almost out of time here. There's one final question from the audience, and it's changing gears a little bit, but I really like this question a lot from Steve. And it says, family farming is often a very traditional business where older generations aren't always enthusiastic about the kind of innovation that you've been talking about. So how did you work with the extended family and the other members of the Paul family to really be so nimble and implement a lot of the things that you've been talking about for the past 45 minutes?
Yeah, so I think my dad is listening, so I might temper what I say here. So no, but yeah, I would say the one thing, with my family that I've always admired and have admired a lot more is, as I've gotten older and realized it is, if things weren't working, we tried something different, and I think that's got to be a key thing. That one, is if you see something that's not working, quit doing it. And I think you can look to our family where, dairy farming wasn't profitable anymore. So we were doing beef farming, we did pig farming in a different, and we did chickens, and quite frankly, we all work off the farm as well. I think that the small family farm that only works on the farm is difficult. But I'd say, it's just really about being open and discussion and just trying things. And I think there's also got to be I really like the idea of, how measuring things. And that, is probably a little bit of my background too, but I always say, like, what gets measured is what gets done, so, as we started trying new ideas and testing things, and I can tell you there's been a number of ideas that got thrown on the table that we were really close to pulling the trigger on. And we said, this isn't maybe the right time for it or the right thing. And, thankfully we didn't. And then there's things we've tried that I said, well, let's not do that again. That wasn't a good idea. And, we just continually try to make changes. And so I'd say the key thing is, managing, working with family is very different than, working with non-family, because it's really hard to have like those planned out conversations and those maybe tough conversations, and then you can walk away from it, and the thing is, you can't manage family like it is at the end of the day a family business. But I think for us, there's a lot of people involved, so my dad and his 2 younger brothers, so Bud and Tim and Kenny, they're the guys that are just there on the farm every day, really making it happen, and producing the product and taking care of it all year. There's my mom, my sister, my aunts, so there's Kathy and Judy that are very involved with the farm. We have more family members coming in. But I think the one thing is we really try to focus on what we're good at, and each one of the family members has a different skill set in focusing there. But I think at the end of the day, it's a lot easy. It's a really difficult at first. And it kind of goes back to eating that live frog. where it's really hard when you say, you know what, I want to change my mind because you know what, I've always sold my milk to the milk plan. Why should I change my mind? But I think it's one of those things. Once you get through that initial sort of maybe bloody nose of changing the process, it starts to feel a little bit better and a little bit better. And the thing is, when something works, just stop, or doesn't work, just stop. So, you know what, this isn't working for me. I need to do something different, or was it really my fault that it didn't work? I think that's probably small business in general where we tend to double down. And, I think one of the things I always think about is like the sunk cost fallacy. And so whether that is money or time or whatever that is, we tend to get this idea of, well, I've invested so much money, I can't stop now. Well, that's not a good argument.
Yeah. So Travis, last question for you before we end the call here, and that's how can people learn more about Paul Family Farms?
Yeah, I'd say, probably the easiest thing, paulfamilyfarms.com is our website, I'd say what's exciting for our website, we have the ability to order online. But what I'd say is, if you order online, it's great. We'll ship. Our $5 shipping is still here. I'd say probably the next thing that I, want to focus on is, our Friends of the Farm page. So when you go there, if you click on Friends of the Farm, you're going to see all the other small businesses we partner with. And I'd say, if you're going to buy syrup and you can, whether that's going to Defer Coffee in the Strip District and buying our syrup or Steel City Salt, or if you're in Pittsburgh and you're having medium rare foods deliver it, or if you're visiting Potter and Tioga County and you go to, a stroll down memory lane or the hardware store, that drugstore that sells our syrup, go out and support those other businesses. So I'd say Paul Family Farms is a good stop. Follow us on social media if you're a social media person. And then come see us at a market or an event. I feel like we've gotten pretty good at running markets and being safe and making it comfortable. And, we continually have an update. So if you go to our website, you'll see all the different events we're doing in Pittsburgh and around the state of Pennsylvania.
Travis, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been really enlightening. I learned a lot. I'm really inspired about all of the steps that you and the farm have taken to continue to find ways to grow and adjust the business through all of the craziness that COVID has thrown our way. So thank you so much for sharing those insights. If anyone is interested in learning a little bit more about Paul Family Farms, obviously check out paulfamilyfarms.com. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about Honeycomb Credit, you can check us out at honeycombcredit.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a lovely evening.
Thanks, George.